So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your willingness to be a greeter and screener here at our tax sites filing season, and we're really excited to get things kicked off. Hopefully Wednesday. It looks like I drove a little bit today. It looks like things are getting better, so hopefully everything thaws out. We can get everything set up Monday or Tuesday and get things kicked off on Wednesday. So the first thing we're going to talk about is customer service. Why is it important? Why are we even talking about it? But really, it's one of the key elements of what we're doing. Like people think about taxes and they think about, numbers immediately a lot of the time. But really, this is really about customer service. Even when they're getting their taxes prepared, it really is way more personable than you would imagine. It's not just numbers to them, it's their whole family's financial history over the past year. And they're sharing that with us. So, we want to make sure that we are recognizing that customer service is a big part of that and that we're doing everything we can to make sure that our level of customer service is as high as it can be. Customer service entails things like providing assistance, showing concern and care in a friendly manner to help resolve or address an issue, which is something we do a lot. A lot of the times people will come in. Taxes can be frustrating. Sometimes the IRS, as much as we love them, they can be frustrating to people who have to pay taxes. And it is what it is. And a lot of the times people will need some good customer service because they might come into it already, not in the best situation. So our job there is to help them as much as we can, both in their situation in terms of money and also, addressing it from a customer service perspective where we're doing everything we can to, help them get to a better positive place. If it's something that maybe it was an issue this year, maybe we can help them, increase their withholding so they don't get hit by the same tax penalty in the following year. Things like that, kind of thinking outside the box. How can we go beyond to provide better customer service to the people that we're working with? And it's important because it plays a vital role in affecting how clients and customers view and rate an organization's service. Each return we do, at the end of it, there is a satisfaction survey. We've got pretty high marks in that before, and we really hope to keep that trend going. So I guess to some extent we are rated on our customer service. We have historically had 5 out of 5 stars, and that's something we want to keep doing in this year and in future years. So as a greeter, the greeter and screener have slightly different roles and responsibilities. So as a greeter, you need to do, like I said, the two exam certifications. They're the volunteer standards of conduct and the intake interview and quality review. We'll look at those in a minute. Your job as a greeter is to ensure that you're welcoming people into the sites. You want to make sure that they're signing the sign-in sheets, that they feel welcome, that they know where to sit. You can help them sit down and start filling out their forms and get settled while they wait to have their taxes prepared. We want to make sure that we're informing the clients of, if they need to know where the restroom is or if they're thirsty, where the water fountains or vending machines are, become familiar with the site. That way we can help them out if they have any needs like that. And also, we use a digital form called Jot Form. That's to track your volunteer hours. So each time you show up to a shift, you will go to your Jot Form. It should be the homepage of all of our tax laptops. But you'll just go there and you'll submit that on a weekly basis to make sure that we're tracking your hours. We want to make sure we get those right. And screeners are kind of similar to greeters. They kind of go a little bit beyond. They will, again, they need the two exam certifications, volunteer standards of conduct and intake interview and quality review. And they'll kind of, while taxpayers are waiting to work with the preparer, screeners can help the clients complete all the forms necessary for tax assistance. And that's mainly the intake interview form that we'll take a look at, the 13614C. Um, they will take a look over all the documents the taxpayer brings to make sure that it meets the qualification for VITA, which we'll look at those qualifications in a minute. Make sure nothing is out of scope. Make sure that they're being assigned to someone who is within their certification level of the return based on the forms that they've brought. And again, screeners will also need to track their hours using the JOT form. So certification. So all volunteers are required to complete those two certification forms we talked about. When you do that, you will digitally sign this form, and then we will need to have a copy of this form. You'll send it to us and we'll get a digital signature on that, but it's really important that you keep that form and make sure that you don't lose that or you don't accidentally delete it and can't log back in to get it. You have to have that form and it has to be signed and completed, showing that you've passed the certification exams and that someone at United Way has approved that you are ready to volunteer. That's a requirement from the IRS. So, until we have that form, until you've completed your certifications and provided that form to us showing that you have done that, we can't allow any volunteers to serve because that would be a breach of liability. So can't do that. And the site coordinators will be required to keep a copy of all the volunteer certifications in their site coordinator's handbook. So that's something that we will retain on site. That way, if we ever have a site review and someone from the IRS shows up to make sure we're doing everything correctly, they will ask to see these forms. So we have to have them. The site coordinator will have them on site. If someone from the IRS shows up and needs to see them, we have to be able to provide them. So these forms are really important. But all you'll need to do to have this form is complete those 2 exams, pass with 80% or higher, and then hit a checkbox pretty much to sign it digitally. So not a big deal in terms of doing it, but a very big deal in terms of having it. Some required site posters. So your site coordinators at the tax sites will already be aware of this, but just know there are certain posters and signage that the IRS requires us to have available and hung up at the tax sites, but not just anywhere, somewhere where they are accessible for taxpayers to see. We normally like to put these somewhere near the waiting area. That way, we want to make them as accessible and easy to see for taxpayers as we can. And just these are a few examples of those required site posters. We've got the 4836, which is the screen one, and then the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, 5169.
Meeting
And
is
both, go ahead. Is there a question? All right. A couple other required posters we have to have. The civil rights protection is one, and that'll be a big poster we have, as well as the IRS certified volunteers providing free tax preparation, the 3676A. All those will be at the site. Just be aware of those. If you ever see one fall down or one missing, please let the site coordinator know, because we have to have these 4 posters up at all times and somewhere where they can be viewed by taxpayers, so they're aware of what their rights are and to have that information accessible to them. So talking about free tax prep eligibility guidelines, one thing we do is we have a custom sign-in sheet. So when you get there at the start of your shift, when we're opening up the site, make sure that there's a new client sign-in sheet out each day. Make sure all the materials are ready, like pencils are sharpened or the pens are prepared. That way, when taxpayers come in, they don't have to stop and ask someone how to sign the sign-in sheet. They're just, you can direct them to the welcome table and they can be good to go. Make sure that our envelopes are stuffed with correct intake documents. If you work at a drop-off site, there'll be things like that drop-off instructions and that form 14446. Those are kind of forms specifically for drop-off or virtual options, but the main thing is we'll have our form 13614C, which I'm just going to call the II form. That's the intake interview form. It is a 4-sided yellow form that we'll look at closely here in a minute. And also, if they have any other things, like if they're doing prior year returns, which we typically don't see until the extended filing season, they might need a stimulus in advance CTC worksheet. But that's probably something you won't see until the extended season, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And the last thing that they'll need in those envelopes is our customer demographics and satisfaction survey. It is 1 page, 2-sided. It's 5 questions on the front, 5 questions on the back. We want to make sure that that's in the envelope for each taxpayer we work with, because they will need that at the end of their return process. As a greeter or a screener, you want to make sure that as you're welcoming the clients in, that you're directing them to the welcome desk or to the sign-in sheet. Make sure that they're filling out the sign-in sheet, thoroughly. Make sure they're putting in all the information we need, like the date, the time, what services they need, and before they leave, make sure that they sign out and sign their signature on the sign-in sheet as well. We do retain those documents. Site coordinator will gather those, and we do return those to the United Way office. So please keep an eye on those sign-in sheets. Make sure taxpayer doesn't take them or they don't get misplaced, because that is something that we do retain. All right, so I've talked about the II form a little bit, and this is what it looks like. This is the first page of it anyway. It's 4-sided. It's 13614C, the intake interview and quality review sheet. And this will be pretty much the main form that the taxpayers will be working on while they're waiting to be served, while they're sitting in the waiting area. They'll need to fill this out in completion. Make sure that we have the information that we need. That way, when they are seated with the tax preparer, that preparer can take their II form and immediately get down to it, start asking the questions we need to follow up on, and just making sure that everything goes smoothly and as quickly as possible. If you see someone who's just sitting there and they're holding the form, but they're not really filling it out, please go up to them and offer, if you're a screener, offer to assist them in filling it out. Just encourage them to fill it out as thoroughly and completely as possible before they are brought in to work with the tax preparer, because it just really slows everyone up if they don't have this completed and they're sitting there after waiting and get to a table with the tax preparer, and then the tax preparer just has to wait for them to fill out this form. So they'll be working on this. It mostly asks, the first page is personal information, making sure that they put in things like their names, birthdays, were they a student, can they be claimed as a dependent, who lived in their household. This is stuff that's all important to the tax return that our preparers will need to complete the return thoroughly. So we want to make sure that they're filling out all the information. The second and third page deal more with income, but those are more check boxes where they'll have the option of checking yes, no, or unsure as to which types of income they've received throughout the year. And the last page I want to say is pretty much where they sign. Got ahead of myself. But yeah, as a screener, you'll assist clients in completing this form. Yeah, please make sure that all the questions that are applicable to their household have been answered. Um, Please make sure that clients have all the required identification documents. So just what they'll need is taxpayer, and if they're filing with the spouse, we will need a photo ID for both of them. And then anyone on the return, so both taxpayer, spouse, and independents, we need social security cards for essentially. Passports or identity theft pins. For passports will also work for a photo ID. And if they have their identity theft pin, we'll need that as well. But the main thing, are those photo IDs for the taxpayer and spouse, and social security cards for everyone on the return. All the IDs must be original or certified copies from government agencies that issued the letter or notice. We can't accept photocopies of identification. And the reason we do this is because we want to make sure that everything we're doing thoroughly and securely. And if we just accepted photo IDs or photocopies of social security cards, that really kind of opens the door for people to potentially have their identity stolen or run into issues like that. So we need to see the real thing or a certified copy from that government agency. So when they show those forms as a screener, you will also verify those forms and their income qualifications. So look over, all their income or their identification documents. Make sure, just that they are the people that IDs say they are. I don't think we've had a problem with that, but just, we want to make sure that we're double checking and doing our due diligence. So just making sure that they are who they say they are, and that, also the total of all their income meets the qualifications to receive our free tax assistance. So, you know, um, our cutoff that the IRS gives us is $64,000 annually. If you're below that, outside of a few other things that are out of scope for us, we can help you with VITA. But if you're making more than $64,000 a year, you are not eligible for this free service. So if someone comes in and you're a screener and, they pull out their forms and you can see they have a W-2 showing they have $80,000 worth of income, right then and there, you can say, I'm sorry, you make more than our IRS mandated income threshold. So you're not eligible for this free service. That's going to lead to a much better response from them than if they were to fill out the whole II form, wait however long they have to wait to work with the tax preparer, and then they get up there only to be told that they can't do this, they've wasted their time. So if you see someone come in and you can immediately tell based on their documents that they have more than $64,000 worth of income, you can immediately let them know, like, hey, I'm really sorry, but you're not eligible for this service. And you want to also, if they come in with multiple forms of income, still do your best to see if you can figure out what those totals are. That way, if they come in with Social Security, retirements, wages, gambling, business income, things like that, and you can tell, like, oh, well, they've got one W-2 for $40,000, and they've got a 1099 for another $40,000. You can let them know, hey, we're really sorry, but based on your total income projections, you are not eligible for the service. These are just some examples of some of the forms you might see. So we've got health insurance, so this is a 1095A, Social Security income, retirement income, wage income, which is a W-2, which is pretty much the most common one, unemployment, the identification documents like Social Security and a state-issued photo ID or a passport, and also bank information. If they want to do a direct deposit and they're going to get a refund, it's always helpful for them to have like a check like this because we can get the account number and routing number from the bottom of from the bottom of these checks. So if someone comes in and you can tell they are out of scope, whether that be, their income is just clearly over $64,000, or a few of the other things that would make return out of scope for us, if they are in bankruptcy, um, if they have a return that has topics on it that exceed the advanced certification, which is what most of our coordinators and volunteers, that's their certification level. So anything like carryback income is Schedule D is like business and self-employment. So if they have a business they own and the business, their income for the year ended up being a loss, that's out of scope for us. If they need an I-10 and need to fill out a W-7, that's not really something we can do at a VITA site. And then there are more examples of topics that are out of scope in the Pub 4012. But we don't really see too many of those. Most people that are coming to us, kind of know what we do and what our limitations are. But it's still something to be on the lookout for, especially with new clients. So letting them know if they are out of scope. The number one reason we see for that is just having more than $64,000. We do want to refer them to a couple of other agencies that might be able to help them. One of those is our Memphis Area Legal Services, and another one are the Legal Aid Society, the Tennessee Taxpayer Project. Both of these organizations are great. They can help clients who might be out of scope for VITA but still need some assistance in getting their taxes done. And these organizations can provide some assistance in Spanish, and then for the Legal Aid Society, some other languages through interpreter service.
Will those free agencies, will we have those that information at the sites or at the desk, the greeters desk, to give out to a taxpayer if they, if they are out of scope? The Memphis Area Legal and the Legal Aid Society will have that information on hand to give to them.
So I'm not sure if we have that like printed on any of the materials we currently have, but if you would like to retain that and have it as a handout, I can share these slides with y'all, and you and your site coordinator can print a few of these out to pass out if you want to keep like a stack of them at the tax site. That's just something, I would let the site coordinator know that you want to do that, and I can share these slides with everyone at the conclusion of this training.
That'll be good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That's also can be found in 4012.
What's that?
That information can be found in the 4012.
The out of scope topics or the two agencies that we refer
The
people to?
agencies, the agencies.
Oh, okay, perfect. So that information is in the 4012 as well. So there is, I'm sorry, I was wrong. There is a physical copy on the sites that'll have that referral information. Thank you. Some additional contact information. Another agency who is great is the Taxpayer Advocate Service. They're an independent organization within the IRS, and they're really, it's in the name. They really advocate for taxpayers. They can kind of open up cases to help people with individual situations. We refer a lot of clients to the Taxpayer Advocate Service when their issue really goes beyond VITA and beyond, I try and tell clients who come to me with issues that really need to go to the Taxpayer Advocate Service, like we focus on doing the tax preparation. Once we have transmitted it to the IRS and they've accepted that return, it's really out of our hands, like both in terms of what we're qualified to do and in terms of what we can do. Pretty much once the IRS accepts the return, other than maybe amending it, it's pretty much locked to us. So, the TAS is really great to know because anyone who's got a situation that requires something outside of VITA, a lot of the times they can help with that. So they can offer help if the taxpayer's problem is causing a hardship or they haven't been able to resolve it with the IRS. So that's a great contact information to have to be able to refer people to them. They do have a local Memphis office, and they spoke with us. It was Tuesday night, so they're great. We work with them. If you're at some of the sites, they will occasionally be by and offering to offer help taxpayers at our tax sites. If you see them, they're wonderful. You go up and say hey to them and just be familiar with them because they are a great referral source for people who might have issues beyond what we can help with or beyond, what is really entailed in just the preparation of a tax return.
Anna, can I just say that at this time, if any of the other greeters or screeners are at other sites and they come across a information where they need to refer them to a task person, they will be located at the Southland Mall on Thursdays from 10 to 3, starting, I guess, in the 29th, starting the week of the 29th.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, so they'll be at Southland. You said Thursdays, and is there a specific time, or are they just there during the
10
site
to
hours?
3, 10 to
10 to
3.
3? Perfect. Thank you. Yep. So Southland Thursdays, 10 to 3. If they need to talk to someone with tasks, they can always reach out to them directly. But if they want to do it at one of our sites, they do have that option on Thursdays at Southland. Oh, and one other thing about these pictures here on the left, if a taxpayer comes in and they don't have any forms, they don't have a W-2 or anything, but they still want to know how they can get their taxes done, you can inform them that they'll need to request a wage and income transcript from the IRS. That's something that should have a record of all their income throughout the past year. I always encourage people, if you can get your W-2s, if it's a matter of you needing to contact your employer, or something that you can do within your power to get your W-2s, exhaust those options first, because while the transcript is really helpful and can help us do a tax return, I would say transcripts often have, like, in general, like 95% of the information we might need, or we're really going for that 100%, which we will find on the official forms like the W-2s and the 1099s. So if they come in and they're just asking for help, how can they get a copy to even get things started? That's a good thing to know, to tell them to do. They can go to the IRS's website at irs.gov or give them a call to request a tax transcript. But again, please encourage them to do everything within their power to first get their W-2s and their actual forms. But yeah, if they can't do that, then the transcript is much better than nothing, for sure.
Hunter, Denise Williams here. Let me say something if you don't mind. The transcripts for the 2023 year are not readily available till later on in the year, which probably would be around the time that we do the extended.
Okay. So that's more like if they need something from prior years during the time
Correct.
that the greeters and screeners would be at site. Okay, thank you. That's good to know. So I did not realize there was a delay on those transcripts. That's good to know. So if they have it for prior years, they can do that, or let them know that might be something that is an option to them later in the year. But that might work out because that gives them more time to try and get their W-2s and 1099s, which is what we really hope they can do anyway. Client assignment. So as a screener, you'll also be responsible for assigning the clients to a tax preparer based on their certification level. So you'll be familiar with the certification levels of the preparers at your tax sites. We'll be wearing name badges, and most of our volunteers are certified at the advanced level anyway. But if you're at a site where someone there is certified, like say military certification, and you come in and you look at someone who's filling out an II form and they're marking they have military level topics, then you can make sure that you're assigning them to that person who is certified to work on that return. Again, this will be just like the sign-in sheet, and that we'll do a new sheet each day. Make sure that they sign the sheet and list their time in and time out for tax assistance. And we will retain these documents as well. So please make sure that we're keeping an eye on these, that taxpayers don't walk off with this one, because the site coordinators will collect those and return those to the United Way's office at the end of tax season. One thing to know, if a taxpayer is talking to you and they say that their electronic file was rejected because someone else has already filed under their social security number or a duplicate was filed, you can let them know that there's a form for that. It's called the Identity Theft Affidavit. It's the form 14039. They'll need to fill that out. They can get it from the irs.gov website. They can print it, fill that out, and attach it to their return that we prepare for them when they mail that in. That way the IRS will know, like, hey, y'all are receiving this and it's going to look like a second return for one you've already accepted, but that first one wasn't me. I feel like my identity's been stolen and this is the actual tax return that I'm filing for the year. So just, being familiar with that if you hear people talking about that situation. Um, some additional contact information for the IRS, like if they need to do a payment plan or make installments, they can do that on the IRS's website or over the phone, or they can complete these forms and send them by mail. And lastly, for contact information for United Way staff, if you have any questions or issues surrounding your site's operation, you can always go to your site coordinators first, but if you need to talk to someone at United Way, get in touch with Matt, who is our program manager at 901-433-4328, or you can get in touch with me at 901-433-4303. So this is the virtual VITA taxpayer consent form. This is something that you probably only really see if you're working at a drop-off site or if you're doing anything with Get Your Refund, but I don't think we'll have any greeters or screeners working for Get Your Refund. So this is just an additional consent form that they'll need to sign if they're doing any kind of a virtual model like drop-off. But outside of that, you probably won't see this form. Here's our demographic and satisfaction survey, like I talked about earlier. So this is just one page, front and back. This will be something else after taxpayers while they're waiting. If they finish their II form and they're still waiting, please encourage them to go ahead and start filling this out because our preparers will need this at the end of their return. We put this information into TaxSlayer. So it's just 10 questions, multiple choice. They can just circle the ones that apply to them, but just be familiar with this. Make sure that this is in those envelopes for the taxpayers and make sure that they're completing this and that we're collecting these and getting that information. Some other materials at our tax sites that we might have out pertain to financial education and asset building. These are just some other approved materials that might help taxpayers out in various situations. So we want to make sure that we keep these stocked at the site. If you notice that you're getting low, remember to let your site coordinator know when additional supplies are needed. But just, when you get to your site, become familiar with the materials that we offer to taxpayers and just know, our main thing there is preparing taxes, but if we can offer any kind of approved pamphlets or something that might offer some more information to taxpayers that's helpful, we try and do that as well. All right, so taking a look at the shift responsibilities, you're going to arrive at least 15 minutes before the site opens. That way you have time to get everything set up and time to breathe before people arrive instead of being like me at the start of this meeting where you're rushing in and coming in disheveled. That's never fun. Make sure that you're always wearing your name badge. That's important because the name badges, they're our identification. We check everyone else's identification. Our name badges at our sites are our identification. So we want to make sure that we're always wearing those. Make sure that the waiting area and the restrooms are clean. Make sure that everything's ready for people to arrive once y'all open. And make sure all the materials are ready to go. Restock the service desk if there are any forms or pens or clipboards that might have been moved around. Let's make sure everything, is as ready as it can be for a smooth operation once people start arriving and once we start serving clients. In the middle of the day, when you're leaving your shift and the site's not over on your way out, please be sure to restock those items again. Just check to see if there's anything that you might have gone through throughout the first part of the day that needs some restocking before you head out. Be sure to sign out on that volunteer sign-in sheet and be sure to leave your name tag at the site. Don't take it home with you. We'll keep those at the site. That way when you get there, you can put it on, and when you leave, you can take it off. And also, go ahead and schedule your next shift. Make sure the site coordinator knows when they'll see you next, and just so we can prepare and be ready for another day of doing tax. And then if you're on the closing shift, if you're closing down the site, again, restock all the items, leave your name tag at the site, make sure everything is as clean as it can be when you leave. That way it'll be less work for whoever's opening the next day. Make sure that we collect all of those surveys, all the sign-in sheets, all the client assignment sheets. Make sure we keep all those and put those in a separate pile. And again, go ahead and make sure the site coordinator is aware of when you scheduled your next shift. Like I said, we use Jot form, so just moving forward, all of our sign-in sheets will be submitted via electronically via Jot form. Those will run from Sunday to Saturday, so you'll fill them out on a weekly basis with your hours. So, please keep a record of your hours. That way, at the end of the week, you haven't forgotten what you worked, or you can always reference the physical sign-in sheets on the site. But just, be familiar with Jot form. Like I said, all of our laptops should have the Jot form as their homepage. And just be sure to do those on a weekly basis so we can keep track of your hours. That is something the IRS request of us, and if I say request, I mean we have to give it to the IRS. We want those hours for volunteers to be as accurate as possible. So please do your best to make your hours on Jot form as representative of the actual hours you worked if you can. And again, please wear your name tag. It'll have your name and your certification level. So if you're a greeter or a screener, you can just mark whether you're a greeter or a screener. Please continue to wear your name badge. All right, so talking about those certification exams, there are 3 primary materials that we'll use for those exams this evening. The first one is the 6744. So this is actually going to be pretty much the test booklet where the questions and multiple choice answers are in this booklet that you'll use while you're on Lincoln Learn. So, you'll read the questions in 6744 and you can answer in Lincoln Learn. There'll be other pages with kind of some pictures of examples that you'll need for the problems, or not for the test y'all are taking. I'm thinking the advanced test. But yeah, the questions are in the 6744 and you'll answer them on Lincoln Learn. The 4961, that's the volunteer standards of conduct. We'll take a look through that, prepare y'all to take that exam. And then the 5101 is the intake interview and quality review training. That's just the training for the second exam you'll take in terms of how to do a thorough intake interview and quality review. And we'll take a look at Lincoln Learn. Lincoln Learn is the platform that we use with the IRS to obtain your certification, to take the exams. Yeah, and you can, if you ever want any additional information, you can go to the Lincoln Learn website and they've got virtual classes and slides of, stuff if you're interested in ever getting your advanced certification or your basic certification or anything like that. That information and those materials are available within Lincoln Learn. But for being a greeter or a screener, that information's in there as well. We're going to cover most of that tonight, and then we'll primarily use Lincoln Learn, to complete those certifications by putting in your answers. All right, before I get into Lincoln Learn or any of those actual training publications, any questions about anything we've covered just now?
I have a question about the social security cards that the taxpayer may bring in. I've noticed some that will come in with an already photocopy of like their children's social security card, or some will come in and say, well, I don't have a social security card, but you guys have them. I come here, like been coming here for the last 3-4 years. So you should be able to pull them up on your last year taxes. Is that not allowed, or is that still a practice that we can take their photocopies if they don't have the originals with them?
So the policy that the IRS places on us is that we do need to see the originals. I know, I've worked with a lot of people and I've gotten that response too, that, y'all did mine last year. You can see that it's my social security card, and while that is true, that doesn't really address the reason behind this policy, which is, for security and identity protection.
True.
Because, if we were doing that, or if we were taking photocopies, then who's to say, someone else didn't take that photocopy and now they're saying that is who they are. You know, I know that can be tricky sometimes when people push back and say, well, y'all have done this in prior years, but really the policy as it's given to us from the IRS that for social security cards, we need to see the original or a certifying letter from the Social Security administration. Um, sometimes, I've just had to tell people, like, I'm sorry, like, you need to contact the Social Security office and you need to get them to send you a new copy of your Social Security card because we're going to need that to do your return. So, I realize that can be a tricky situation, but the policy, as I understand it, as it's given to us from the IRS, is that we need to see the physical Social
original?
Security card. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
What if, excuse me, what if they use their tax information from the year before and they have all the information on it, like the social security card numbers and everything? Can we use that, or do we still need to see the original social security cards?
I would say in that situation, like if it auto fills from last year's information and that information is correct, we can use that information in terms of like making it easier and quicker for the person preparing the return. But again, you know, one of the rules the IRS gives to us is that to move forward in preparing the return, we have to see the physical. So as far as I'm aware, you know, those are tools that can make our jobs easier, but the IRS still expects us to see the physical Social Security card or that certifying letter from the Social Security Administration before we transmit any return.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right. Before we dive into those training publications, has anyone here not created a Lincoln Learn account yet?
I don't have one.
Yeah, I
Okay.
haven't.
All right, then I'm gonna post in here how we can go about doing that. Copy this over. I'm putting the URL in the chat right now. So when you get to this page on Lincoln Learn, you're just gonna hit create account. And then you're just gonna pretty much fill in your personal information. For this group, you're gonna put 1 for VITA volunteer. And then for these, you're just gonna, they're all gonna be no except for this last one. You'll say yes to that. So group 1, all no except the last one is yes. For training source, you can either put Lincoln Learn or publication 4491. I would say let's do publication 4491, just to have everything standardized. And then you'll just put in your personal information, your first and last name, select a username and a password, put in your email address, physical address. For partner organization name, you can put United Way of the Mid-South. The number of years that you volunteered with VITA, you don't need to worry about this one, and you should be able to leave the rest of these blank. So yeah, it's mostly your personal information. Just know that for this first part, just hit group 1, and then yes to that last question, and then pub 4491. And then once you've got all that in, you'll hit register, and it should bring you to a page. Looks like. So it should brings you to a page. It looks like this. So you can just hit for greeter or screener. You can probably just hit basic, and these will be the 2 that you do: the 2023 Volunteer Standards of Conduct exam and the 2023 Intake Interview and Quality Review exam. You don't need to worry about the other ones. These are just going to be the 2 that y'all will do, and that's how you access the virtual testing platform. Where when we're going through this and when you're doing your test, you'll put in your answers here. Any questions about that? All right. If not, let's take a 10-minute break and let those who don't have their Lincoln Learns have some time to set that up. I'll stay on in case anyone has any questions, but we will kick things off with the training materials at 7 o'clock. Does that sound good to everyone?
Sounds good.
All right. And yeah, I'll stay on if any of y'all who are making Lincoln Learn accounts have any questions or have any issues, but otherwise we will get things back at 7 o'clock.
Hey, Hunter, I do have a question though. Still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. For the VSC and the IIQRA, QRE, I did mine at the end of December in 2023, but I completed my advanced exam on the training last week. I mean on the whatever day that was, the first in 2024 I signed it. So will it make a difference? Will it show, since I did the VSC and the IIQRE on the 23rd, but I completed my advanced exam on the first day of the this Zoom meeting thing. So I did that one in January of 2024. Will it? So when I had signed it when I completed the VSC and the II, and then should I not have signed it, electronically signed it, or just waited until I did the advanced exam? Or does it make, because when I look at it, now it's showing that my exam on the 13615, that I completed it in December 2023 instead of January 2024. Does that matter, or can I go back in and adjust the date, or what?
I'm not sure if we can adjust the date. So just to
Hunter,
clarify,
It's gonna
Denise
show
Williams,
that
here, it's gonna
old
give you
date.
the original date. It's not going to change it, so it doesn't matter. We did that.
Right.
So
Right.
it's gonna be that original date. You did it in December, that's the date that's gonna carry you all the way through the season, okay?
Okay.
I think last year it did show the current date, but this year for some reason it's gone back to that
Right.
original date.
Original date.
Oh, okay. Because that's what I thought, it would advance it to the most recent date instead of the
It
date when
does
I
not.
did it. Okay.
the main thing is just that it's all like that you did it all on one login. Like we need to have, all three of those past certifications showing on the same agreement form. So as long as you did it as long as it's all showing up on one like volunteer agreement PDF, then I think it's good. I don't think I think it's interesting that it doesn't show the most recent date, because I feel like that could create an issue with people getting certified after they've signed the form. But as far as I'm aware, that shouldn't be an issue for us.
It won't be. The only thing that matters is that when you get the 13615, it updates it to whatever other class that you took since you signed off on the original classes. So it just
Okay,
puts
yeah, mine is showing that on December 29th is when I completed the VSC and the II. But then when we did when we were on the Zoom the other day, that's when we did the advanced. Well, after we got went through the question to test and all of that stuff, the questions and answers, then that's when I went in and kind of went through the program again and put in my answers, but it didn't advance it to the, when I went back in saying I passed, it didn't advance the date to that January, whatever day it was, last week. So that was my only question. No,
As long as it shows you passed, it should be good for us.
good for me.
all right, break time.
All right, I've got 7 o'clock. Everyone back? Everyone ready to go?
Yes.
All right. All right, so this is the Pub 4961. This is the volunteer standards of conduct. These are really important because, like I kind of touched on earlier, people come to us, seeking help and do that. They share a lot of confidential, a lot of personal information with us. So, VITA and the IRS, we want to uphold these high standards of conduct because there is a lot of confidential information. There's a lot of trust involved in what we do. And if we were to do something that would cause us to lose that trust, then, VITA as a program really can't operate without having that component of trust to it. So we want to make sure that we're always following these standards of conduct and take this ethics training seriously. Not only because it's a rule for the IRS, but because it really is fundamental to what we do as part of VITA. So the volunteer standards of conduct, we'll look at each one more individually, but essentially there are 6 standards of conduct that the IRS, kind of condenses everything into. Number 1 is just to follow all quality site requirements. Number 2, and we'll look at the QSRs in a little bit. Number 2, do not accept payment, ask for donations, or accept refund payments for federal or state tax return preparation for customers. So we don't take any money. Essentially, everything we do is free. Number 3, do not solicit business from taxpayers you help or use the information you gained about them, taxpayer information, for any direct or indirect personal benefit for yourself, any other specific individual or organization. Number 4, do not knowingly prepare false returns. Number 5, do not engage in criminal, infamous, dishonest, notoriously disgraceful conduct, or any other conduct considered to have a negative effect on the VITA/TCE program. And number 6, treat all taxpayers in a professional, courteous, and respectful manner. So again, these are important for a lot of reasons, but failure to comply with these standards could result in the removal from VITA TCE programming. So us being unable to do this anymore, pretty much getting kicked out of VITA if we're not following these rules. Inclusion in the IRS's volunteer registry to bar future VITA/TCE activity indefinitely. So as a volunteer or as a coordinator, if you have been found to have violated these standards of conduct, you can be barred from participating in VITA indefinitely into the future. The deactivation of your sponsoring partner's site, VITA/TCE electronic filing ID number. So that's essentially just where they would take, United Way of the Mid-South would no longer be allowed to participate in VITA. So not only would that affect you at an individual level, if it was proven that this is something that was happening either at an organization level or, with the knowledge of the organization, then the organization itself could be punished. The removal of all IRS products, supplies, loaned equipment, and taxpayer information from your site. So pretty much taking everything we've got and not, the removal of all of our equipment. Terminating the partnership with IRS or termination of the grant funds from the IRS to the United Way of the Mid-South. And lastly, the referral of your conduct for potential TIGTA and criminal investigations. So something like, if you're intentionally committing tax fraud, then yeah, you might be liable to some criminal investigation. So let's take a look at those 6 standards of conduct in a little more detail. Like I said, the first exam y'all take and the first certification required is just over the volunteer standards of conduct. So, it is important to know this, not only because you have to pass that exam, but also because, it's fundamental to what we do. You need to pass within 80% or higher to pass the exam. And this training will provide you with an explanation of the 6 volunteer standards of conduct, information on how to report possible violations of the standards of conduct, a description of the consequences of failure to adhere to the program requirements, and some different examples of situations that raise questions on ethical behavior. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to know the 6 standards of conduct, describe the unethical behavior, or use the external referral process to report unethical behavior, identify consequences of failing to comply, and explain how volunteers are protected. So let's take a look. So the first one, I've said that the first volunteer standards of conduct is to follow all quality site requirements. So these are listed here. So a quality site requirement is a policy the IRS has. That's a rule for how we have to operate and maintain our tax sites. So the first quality site requirement is certification. So just everyone that volunteers has to be certified, and they have to have the appropriate certification level for the role that they are doing while volunteering. So if you are a greeter or screener, and one of the tax preparers has to run out for a moment, I don't know, hypothetically, they say, hey, can you sit in and cover for me? You can say, hey, I can, be happy to talk to a taxpayer for you, but I cannot prepare tax returns because I am not certified to prepare tax returns. And that would be a violation of the quality site requirement number 1, which would also be a violation of the volunteer standards of conduct number 1. So just making sure everyone is certified, that they're doing the work within their scope of certification, that we are maintaining those signed agreements, having those available on the site in case they ever need to show those, making sure that we're wearing our name badges that show our certification levels when we're working with taxpayers. The second quality site requirement is that we are following the intake, interview, and quality review process, and we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But essentially making sure that we are doing everything by the book and as thorough and complete as possible when we are intaking and interviewing the taxpayer, and when we're quality reviewing the return, making sure that, for one, that the entire II form is complete by the time that we are done with the taxpayer, making sure that anything that they might have marked as unsure by the time that we are through with the process, that unsure has been changed to a yes or a no, making sure all the different sections, there's one section that the preparer has to fill out, making sure that that's being prepared and filled out on each II form, and making sure that, we're doing thorough quality reviews. So that's something that the volunteers and coordinators will do, where after someone completes the tax return, someone else will come in that also has that certification level, and they'll do a quality review, and they'll work with the taxpayer to ensure that everything is correct, double check all the information that we've put in, and to work with that taxpayer, making sure that they can vouch for the accuracy of that return before we have them sign it. Quality site requirement number 3 is confirming photo identification and taxpayer identification numbers. So again, talking about photo IDs, that's a big part of this, making sure that they have a photo ID for the taxpayer and a spouse if they're filing together, and that they have social security numbers, so social security cards, or individual taxpayer identification numbers, so ITINs for everyone listed on the tax return. And that their names are spelled correctly, making sure that as we input those into the software, that we are doing what matches up to the social security card. A lot of the times, their driver's license might have a name that doesn't necessarily match what's on the social security card exactly. The IRS wants us to go by what is on the social security card, which again is a big reason why it's important that they have that. Because a lot of the times if we deviate from that, the returns are going to get rejected right off the bat for not matching up to what the IRS has as their name in their database. Number 4, making sure that we have appropriate reference materials at our tax site. So those will all be there. The 4012s, Pub 17s, 4299s, all the volunteer tax alerts and quality site requirements, those will all be posted at the site, as well as all those posters and signage we looked at earlier in the slides. Number 5, volunteer agreement. So talking about how we retain those forms 13615. It's really important that that we have those, that they've been signed by you, and that they've been signed by a United Way representative, and that after they've been signed, that we are retaining those at the site. Because if someone shows up, like, we always have to have those on deck and ready to show someone if they need proof that someone working at the tax site has been, completed their certification exams and passed the requirement. So those are really important, that we always have those, that we make sure we are retaining those and keeping those organized. And yeah, I mean, I've already talked about those, so yeah, y'all are aware that those forms are important and we have to have them. Quality site requirement number 6 is timely filing. So one thing we do is when a taxpayer is there and we're working with them and we're preparing the return, More times than not, we actually won't transmit that return to the IRS until later in the day when we're like doing the transmissions. So one of the requirements for the IRS is that we, make sure we do so in a timely manner, making sure that, nothing gets just left on the table or falls through the cracks to where, a taxpayer thinks they're all good, they've signed the return, they've finished working with us, they've gone home, and it just sits in TaxSlayer and no one transmits it. Or, if we send it and it gets rejected, making sure that we're following up with that taxpayer, making sure that we're calling them, and making sure we're doing everything within our power to get them to come back to resolve the issue, and make sure that we're doing all of that in a timely manner. I think the IRS defines it as 48 hours from the point when the taxpayer leaves. But we really want to make sure we're doing it the day of, especially just that first transmission, because otherwise it's going to create a backlog, or worse, it just get forgotten, which we definitely don't want to happen. Number 7 is the civil rights information. So again, just having those posters that we looked at in the slides, making sure that they are available and accessible to all the taxpayers at our sites, that they're posted somewhere where they can be seen and are not hidden or obstructed. Number 8 and 9, number 8 is the correct site identification number, and number 9 is the correct electronic filing identification number. These are essentially just that we're using the right software in TaxSlayer for the site that we're at. We've already set up TaxSlayer with IRS to where these numbers should be correct. In terms of how this would affect you, if you are volunteering at multiple tax sites and you have different TaxSlayer logins, making sure that you're logged into the correct one for the site that you're currently at. But if you're a greeter and a screener, this probably won't pertain to you all that much because you shouldn't be in TaxSlayer. And number 10, security, making sure that we are abiding by the agreed upon security policy that we've got with the IRS. Basically just making sure we're doing everything we can to minimize the chance of there being a breach in security or confidentiality. Making sure that we're storing our equipment in a safe place, making sure that we're giving everything back to the taxpayer, making sure that we're using a secure Wi-Fi, things like that. And so those 10 QSRs, quality site requirements, those make up the first volunteer standards of conduct, just making sure we are operating our sites and that all 10 of these are being fulfilled during our operation. Volunteer standards of conduct number 2, do not accept payment, ask for donations, or accept refund payments for federal or state tax return preparation for customers. So essentially, everything we do is free. We are not charging people anything for VITA services. If we do, we could actually, lose our ability to do VITA. So it's really important that we are not taking any money from taxpayers for any reason at all. This seems like it'd be easy to do, but we have some really, really nice and grateful taxpayers who sometimes will go back and forth with me about trying to give me money, and I'm like, I have no opposition to taking money typically, but this is not something that we can do. It actually, like, as much as I appreciate it, it's actually would do more harm for me to take the money than to accept it. So, while we do appreciate it and we're happy that taxpayers have a good experience at our tax sites, we cannot take any money or donations or anything like that from taxpayers for what we do. We can thank them, we can be grateful, we can be appreciative, we can tell them, make sure they give us 5 out of 5 stars in their satisfaction survey. But we can't take money from them. Even like if they're trying to like sneak us a 20, like, can't, please don't take money, because that is something we absolutely cannot. Oh, also, if they're doing a direct deposit, that direct deposit must be put into that taxpayer's account. The account that it's going to has to have a name of the taxpayer on it. Please never, ever give your bank account information to a taxpayer for their direct deposit. Volunteer standards of conduct number 3, do not solicit business from taxpayers you help or use the information gained about them for any direct or indirect personal benefit for yourself, any other specific individual or organization. So this is essentially saying, when we're working with someone and we're, receiving this information, these documents that have all this confidential stuff about them, only use that knowledge for like the purpose and duration of what they're doing at our tax site. So only preparing their tax return. Like if you find out that you're doing someone's taxes or you're helping with them with their forms, and you see that, I don't know, they run like a cookie business and you also run a muffin business, please do not leave your tax site. Use the email that you got off of their information and reach out to them about joining up to have a cookie and muffin business. Like that would be a violation of this code of conduct. Um, we can't promote our own businesses. Like if you have, your own, I guess, tax preparation service that you charge people for, like even if it's something like they're coming here and they're out of scope for VITA, you cannot self-promote your own business in that situation. Like really, like we are only using the information they give us to prepare their tax returns and assist them through VITA. So, please do not use their personal information for anything else. Please do not use their personal information to reach out to them for anything not related to the tax return. Please don't call up someone, say, hey, you want to go out sometime? That's a violation of the standards of conduct because, and it's also creepy. They'll be like, how'd you get my number? And you'll say, from your tax return. That's not a good way to start anything like that. So please don't do that. Number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. Do not knowingly prepare false returns. We are a free tax service. We cannot commit tax fraud. Please do not do that. Even on kind of a smaller scale, like our job and our due diligence is to make sure that everything we are putting on the tax return is accurate based on the information that we are receiving from the forms and from the taxpayer. So please, do that in everything that we do. If you feel like you have reason to believe or suspicion that a taxpayer is giving you false information they want you to put on that return, I would say, first of all, let your site coordinator know. But know that you are not obligated to complete that tax return if you feel like it is not true and accurate. Yeah, our goal is to make sure that everything we send to the IRS is as accurate as we can tell within our due diligence. So if you're knowingly preparing false returns, then you're essentially committing fraud and you are in violation of this standards of conduct. Number 5, do not engage in criminal, infamous, dishonest, notoriously disgraceful conduct or any other conduct considered to have a negative effect on the VITA/TCE program. Yeah, just know that you can get barred from being a part of VITA if you're engaging in any criminal or notorious activity. Yeah, don't commit crimes while volunteering, please. Again, this I think is also pretty self-explanatory. If you have information indicating that another volunteer has engaged in criminal conduct or violated any of the volunteer standards of conduct, please report such information to your coordinator. And, like basically the chain of command is, your site coordinators, then United Way, and then the IRS. So please report it to your site coordinators and we will follow up. But, if it's something where, you feel like you've done that and, it wasn't effective or any situation like that, know that there is a direct line to where you can report that to the IRS through this email information listed here. All right. Number 6, treat all taxpayers in a professional, courteous, and respectful manner. So, essentially just like we talked about customer service, like we might have some people there that, they might be having a bad day. They might owe taxes. It might be a frustrating situation for them, especially, when we're the one to have to put in the numbers and then a big red number comes up that they see and, they know that they have to pay that. A lot of times their frustrations are not with us. Like it might be with their situation financially at home or with the IRS, but a lot of the times, we are kind of the person there. We're the ones that they can talk to. We're the ones that, sometimes it can be hard to reach people over the phone. We're the ones that are accessible. So a lot of the times we're the ones that hear it. Just know that, our goal is just to provide good customer service, to be professional, courteous, and respectful in these situations. But at the same time, please know if someone's being, rude, or if someone's being just unprofessional or discourteous to you, please let your site coordinator know. That's another situation where you are not forced or obligated to work with someone who's being disrespectful to you. Please let your site coordinator know, and know that you're not obligated, and we don't want you to feel like we are pressuring you to work with someone who is being that's hostile towards you. But that's not something we hardly ever see. People be frustrated. Taxes can be frustrating. our job is to make it as smooth as we can and try and help them as much as we can. We just try and be professional and courteous and respectful at all times. But again, know that if someone does cross that line, then you're not obligated to sit there and work with them. All right, so those are the 6 standards of conduct. We talked about due diligence a little bit. So, when we say due diligence, that just means, everything within our knowledge and power, pretty much, that we are making all the efforts we can make to make sure we are abiding by these quality site requirements, these standards of conduct, that we're doing everything according to our scope of service and according to our certification. One thing about that, I think we'll talk about this here in a minute, but essentially there's a Volunteer Protection Act to where we are protected from liability as volunteers, to where if there's like a mistake on a tax return, as long as we're using our due diligence, we submitted the tax return, we are protected from any liability in terms of that. That's why we make a big deal about going through it during the quality review with the taxpayer. We talk to them because once they sign that, if we used our due diligence, the liability falls to them. So we want to make sure that that's communicated with the taxpayer, but also that our volunteers are aware of that. But the component of that is using our due diligence and doing things knowingly. Like if we are intentionally committing tax fraud, or we are intentionally submitting inaccurate returns or false returns or reporting false income, then that's not using our due diligence. That would be a breach of the Volunteer Standards of Conduct, and that would not be covered by the Volunteer Protection Act. Yeah, again, just know that the first point of contact, if you see that a volunteer standards of conduct is being violated, know that the first point of contact is your site coordinator. Let them know, and they will follow up with it. But beyond that, if you need additional resources, you can contact me at United Way, me or Matt. But if it's something you feel you must report directly to the IRS, or if those other channels of communication have not panned out, know that you can do that using this publication and the emails listed in it. And yeah, just know that there are a lot of consequences to not following this. We've already covered most of them. Just know, essentially, you as an individual could get barred from doing VITA. United Way of the Mid-South, the partner organization, could get barred from doing VITA in the future. They could deactivate our software. They could deactivate our electronic filing identification number, terminate our grant funds and our IRS partnership, and hold the partner responsible for any stolen refunds or other losses due to fraudulent acts. We talked about this a little bit. What if the taxpayer is not telling the truth? If you sense that a taxpayer is not telling the truth, you do not need to ignore that. We want to make sure we're conducting a thorough interview to make sure that there's no misunderstanding between us and the taxpayer. But if that doesn't resolve the matter, please refer the taxpayer to the coordinator. Flag down your site coordinator, let them know why you're feeling this way. What has brought the situation about to where you feel like something is not being represented truthfully. And again, if you're not comfortable with the information provided by the taxpayer, you are not obligated to prepare the return if you have reason to believe that it is not true information. Okay, yeah, here's the Volunteer Protection Act. Just know that you're protected from liability so long as we are using our due diligence, so long that we are only doing the volunteer work that we are assigned to do. If we are, doing things outside of our scope of service. So, for example, if you only get the basic certification, but you're doing an advanced level tax return, then you would not be, falling under the Volunteer Protection Act. As long as we're doing everything we're supposed to do, following the rules, and just doing things as we are assigned to do them, then we are protected from liability through the Volunteer Protection Act. But once we cross over to where we're doing things outside of our scope, or we are doing things that intentionally are in violation of the standards of conduct, at that point, we're no longer covered by that Volunteer Protection Act and could be held liable. But if you make a mistake on a tax return, that's why we do quality review. That's why we work with the taxpayer and talk them through everything before they sign it, because we want to have all these barriers to make sure that catching mistakes before we send it to the IRS. But things happen. Human error is a thing. So if something is incorrect and it gets through all those layers of, reviews that we have, if it's something that, we put on a return, but we did so based on the information as it was presented to us, using our due diligence, then we're not going to be held liable for that because of the Volunteer Protection Act. All right, I guess take a look at the first exam, so the Volunteer Standards of Conduct exam. Let's see. I've got the test booklet here. Scroll down to Volunteer Standards of Conduct test. All right, so this is the first certification exam, the Volunteer Standards of Conduct. Like I said, you need at least an 80% or higher to pass, so 8 out of 10 questions. And we can take a look at this. So let's see. Would anyone like to read a question? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
I'll take the first one.
Thank
Number one, prior to working at a VITA TCE site, all VITA TCE volunteers, that includes greeters, client facilitators, tax preparers, quality reviewers, etc., must A, annually pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct certification test with a score of 80% or higher. B, sign and date the Form 13615 Volunteer Standards of Conduct Agreement agreeing to comply with the VSC by upholding the highest ethical standards. C, pass the Advanced Tax Law certification. D, all of the above. And E, both A and B. You want me to give you the answer?
You can if you want to, or if y'all know the answer, someone can say it or they can put it in the chat. But we'll go through these together. But yeah, if you know it, go ahead.
The answer is E, both A and B.
That's correct. Thank you.
Annually pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct certification test with a score of 80% or higher, and sign and date the Form 13615, the Volunteer Standards of Conduct Agreement.
That's correct. So yeah, this is kind of a trick question because you would think like they would need to pass the Advanced Tax Law certification as well, but the question specifies, all volunteers, so like greeters don't need to pass the Advanced Law certification, only preparers who are doing advanced level tax returns. All right, number two.
Number two, can a volunteer be removed and barred from the VITA TCE program for violating, the Volunteer Standards of Conduct? So of course we encourage class participation, but Hunter, some of those, some people may not be able to see your screen.
Is it too small?
Yeah, I had to go get my book.
Sorry, give me one moment. Is that better?
Well, it's better than what it was, but yeah, I got it. Yeah, so that may be one, one reason. I just want to say that. So the answer would be A.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Someone can be removed and barred from the VITA TCE program if they violate the standards of conduct. All right.
I'll take number three.
Thank you.
If a taxpayer offers you a $20 bill because they were so happy about the quality service they received, what is the appropriate action to take? Take the $20 bill, $20, and thank the taxpayer for the tip. B, tell the taxpayer it would be better to have the $20 deposit directly into your bank account from his refund. C, thank the taxpayer and explain that you cannot accept any payment for your service. D, refer the taxpayer to the tip jar located at the quality review and print station. The answer is C.
That's correct. Thank you. Yeah, we cannot accept any payments for our services.
Okay, number 4. Jake is an IRS tax law certified volunteer preparer at a VITA site. When preparing a return for Jill, Jake learns that Jill does not have a bank account to receive a direct deposit of her refund. Jill is distraught when Jake tells her the paper refund check would take 3 to 4 weeks longer than the refund being directly deposited. Jill asks Jake if he can deposit her refund in his bank account and then turn the money over to her when he gets it. What should Jake do? And of course, the responses are A. Jake can offer to use his account to receive the direct deposit and turn the money over to Jill once the refund is deposited. B, Jake should explain that a taxpayer's federal or state refund cannot be deposited into a VITA volunteer's bank account, and she will have to open an account in her own name to have the refund direct deposited. And C, Jake can suggest she borrow a bank account number from a friend because the taxpayer's name does not need to be on the bank account. And of course, the correct answer is B.
That's correct. Yep, we cannot give them our bank account information and have them put their direct deposit. Even if we have an agreement with them where we're saying, well, I'll take it right out and give it to you. We can't do that. Like if they're going to do a direct deposit, it has to go into an account with the taxpayer's name on it. I'll do number 5. So Max prepares a tax return for Allie at a VITA/TCE site. He finds out during the interview that Allie has no health insurance. After Allie leaves the site, Max writes her name and contact information down to take home to his wife, who sells health insurance for profit. Which of the following statements is true? A, there is no violation to the volunteer standards of conduct unless Max's wife makes a big commission on the sale of health insurance to Allie. B, Max has violated the volunteer standards of conduct because he has used information he gained about Allie to further his own or another person's benefit. C, Max is doing Allie a favor by using her personal information to secure business for his wife. Or D, information a taxpayer provides at a VITA/TCE site can be used for the volunteer's personal gain. The answer to that one is going to be B, Max has violated the volunteer standards of conduct because he's using information he gained about Allie for anything other than doing the tax return at the site. Like, he's benefiting, at this point, I guess his wife's business, but even if it's got good intentions, we're only using that information for the purpose of doing their taxes at the site. So that would be B.
All right, I can do number 6. So Bob, an IRS tax law certified volunteer preparer, told the taxpayer that cash income does not need to be reported because the IRS does not know about it. Bob indicated no cash income on Form 13614C. Bob prepared a tax return excluding the cash income. Jim, the designated quality reviewer, was unaware of the conversation and therefore unaware of the cash income, and the return was printed, signed, and e-filled. Who violated the volunteer standards of conduct? Was it A, Bob, the tax law certified volunteer who prepared the return? B, Jim, the designated quality reviewer who was unaware of the cash income when he reviewed the return? C, the Betty the coordinator? Or D, no one has violated the volunteer standards of conduct? And I think like Ms. Jeans has said in the comments, the answer is A, Bob, the tax law certified volunteer who prepared the return, violated the VSC.
That's correct. Yeah, Bob violated the standards of conduct there. Yeah, if they received income, just because the IRS may not know about it doesn't mean it's not taxable. So, by Bob saying that and by him, encouraging the taxpayer to not mention it and, intentionally leaving it off of the II form, that is knowingly preparing a false return and is in violation of the standards of conduct. Anyone want to do number 7? I can do it. If not, Sue, a VITA/TCE coordinator, was watching the local news when she saw Aaron, a new tax law certified volunteer, in a story about several bank employees being arrested for suspicion of embezzlement. She saw Aaron being led out of the bank in handcuffs. 3 days later, Sue is shocked when she sees Aaron show up at the site, ready to volunteer, apparently out on bond. She pulls Aaron aside and explains that his arrest on suspicion of embezzlement could have a negative effect on the site, and therefore she must ask him to leave the site. Sue removed his access to the software. She then uses the external referral process to report the details to SBEC headquarters by sending an email to that email address. Did Sue take appropriate actions as the site coordinator? I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say Sue did
Yes.
take appropriate actions as the coordinator here. Yeah, I think this falls under that category for criminal and was it notorious, nefarious misconduct? Yeah, we can't have people at our sites that are on the news for embezzlement. That would violate the trust we have with the community. So by doing that, that's a violation of the standards of conduct.
Number
I
8,
take 8.
go ahead.
Sam is assigned to prepare a tax return, a taxpayer's return. The taxpayer has been waiting for a long time due to the volume of the taxpayers needing service. The taxpayer is agitated when they sit with Sam. How should Sam interact with the taxpayer? A, keep calm. B, create a peaceful and friendly atmosphere. C, remain professional and courteous. D, all of the above. And the answer is D, all of the above.
Okay,
Correct.
Hunter, we trying to help you, Hunter. That you get a
Thank you.
breather. Okay, number
Thank
9. VITA TCE sites and volunteers must not solicit business from taxpayers or use taxpayer information for personal or business benefit. And the answer is A, true. Come on,
Number-
Karen, number 10.
Number 10, Ben is preparing a tax return and the taxpayer has a dependent listed. The dependent is the child of the taxpayer's cousin. The child lived with the taxpayer a few months. Ben prepared the return and noted on the form 13614C, the child lived with the taxpayer all year. Did Ben violate the volunteer standard of conduct? A, yes, he knowingly prepared the return with false information. Yes, for B, but the return was accepted, so everything is fine. C, no, the cousin gave permission. D, no, the cousin wasn't filing a return. And the correct answer is A, yes, Ben knowingly prepared the return with false information.
That's correct. And I see in the chat, Jessica, you're asking about 2 and 3 again. 2, yes, a volunteer can be removed and barred if they violate the volunteer standards of conduct. So number 2 is A. And number 3 is going to be C. We cannot accept any forms of payment for our service. Everything we do has to be free. All right. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. So that is the volunteer standards of conduct. That's the exam for that one. So not too bad. And then we've got the intake interview and quality review, which we will look at. Would y'all prefer me to jump right into that, or do you want to take maybe 5 to 10 minutes before I move into that?
Jump into it.
Jump into it. All right,
Yeah, let's go.
let's do it. All right, so this is the intake interview and quality review training. Let's see. The purpose of this training is one of the quality site requirements that make sure we do thorough and complete intake interviews and quality reviews. The II form is really important, making sure that it is completed for each return prepared to the site and completed in fullness. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe the purpose of following a consistent intake interview and a quality review process. the different sections of the II form, the basic steps of a complete intake process, the basic steps of a complete interview process, and the basic steps of a complete quality review process. Some errors that they found from previous years included not signing the tax return after the quality review process was done. So we want to make sure that our taxpayers are only signing everything once we've gone through everything. Once it's been reviewed, with them, making sure that once they sign it, that's kind of the transfer of that liability. So we want to make sure that that comes last. So making sure that we're doing the QR first. When it says using the self-review method, that just means you can't be the person who prepared the return and also the one who did a quality review. It has to be someone else who has the appropriate certification level. You can't be the same person. You can't review your own work, essentially. Not advising taxpayers of responsibility for information provided for the preparation of their tax return. So again, before they sign it, let them know, like, hey, it's important that this is accurate. If it's not, then this could be something that could come back and be detrimental to you. Know that as you sign it, you're becoming the responsible party for this return if it isn't accurate. Some other things that they had some errors in previous years was not fully completing the II form, making sure that when they say fully complete, make sure it's completely filled out, but also any of the boxes that were marked unsure have been changed to a yes or a no by the time that we're done. Not using the form at all, apparently. We have to use this for each return we prepare. Using a taxpayer's prior year tax return to verify identity. So this is kind of like one of the questions that we got earlier. So we can use a taxpayer's prior year return like as a personal, not a personal, but like as like kind of like a helpful reference. Like I've done that before. Like if I'm trying to figure out something when I'm working with a taxpayer, and I can reference what they did last year to make sure everything's looking good for this year, but it does not suffice as like a form of photo ID to fulfill that requirement for the IRS. So yeah, we can't use it for that purpose. And lastly, sites using the prior year tax return quality print set summary page to validate information rather than completing page 1 on the II form. So yeah, again, prior year returns can be helpful for us, but they do not meet the requirement of fulfilling these things that we have to do per IRS regulations, like checking ID and using the II form. So the intake process. So, essentially when we're doing the intake process with the taxpayer, we're going to greet the taxpayer and determine the purpose of their visit. So that's kind of the greeters welcoming them to the site, them signing in the information, filling out, what services they need to receive at our site. Explain the intake, interview, and quality review process with the taxpayer. Let them know, like, you're going to fill out this intake form. This is going to be really helpful for our tax preparers who will walk you through it, and they'll talk with you about what you put down on that form. Letting them know about the quality review. Let them know that we have 2 sets of eyes on everything just to ensure accuracy. Ensure that the taxpayer has all the documents required to prepare the tax return. So if someone comes in and they say, oh, I need my taxes done, but I didn't bring any forms, you can let them know, like, well, you need to go home and get your forms. There's really nothing we can do for you if you don't have your forms with you when you come to the tax site. So just letting them know, like, we're going to need those. It's the taxpayer's responsibility to bring their forms. And a side note to that, if they have their own business and they have business expenses that they want to like use as a deduction, they need to bring those totals to the site when they come up. We don't want people just bringing binders of receipts. We're not like here to do someone else's year-long accounting. We're here to prepare tax returns. So if they have business expenses for self-employment, they need to just have those totaled up when they come to us. Provide each taxpayer with the II form. So that'll be in the envelopes we give them. That'll have the surveys and the II form, and just make sure that they're aware, like when they're sitting down, like, please start filling this out. We'll need it for when you get to prepare. Determining the certification level of the tax return. So just seeing what they have, what they've marked on their II form, and seeing, does this need to be a basic volunteer or an advanced volunteer? Or is it outside of the scope of the people who are at the site altogether? Does it require military certification? Is it over $64,000? Is this something that we can do here while staying within our scope of service and within our certification levels? and then assign the tax return to a volunteer preparer based on certification level. That was that client assignment sheet. Readers, screeners, and client facilitators who assign tax returns must pass the intake interview and quality review certification test, which is why we're all looking at this right now. So when you greet the taxpayer, be professional, be courteous. Hello, good morning, how are you? Ask if they're there to have their taxes done. If they need to just ask some questions or have another item to discuss, refer them as per the site's policy. So talk to your site coordinators about that if they have other policies for that. But the main thing is we are here to help people by preparing their tax returns, especially, if it's in the middle of a busy day and someone comes along with a lot of questions, do what your site coordinator tells you, but I would be shocked if they would want to immediately answer questions. We've got a lot of people waiting to have their returns prepared. The explanation of the intake interview and quality review process. So, we'll just set expectations with the taxpayer. We'll let them know, complete their II form prior to having their return prepared and to provide their supporting documentation. They'll be interviewed by the return preparer and answer additional questions while the returns are being prepared, and that the taxpayer will participate in the quality review of their tax return by someone other than the original preparer. So that part's important, that the tax preparer is engaged and involved in the quality review. They're just not like just sitting there while someone double checks the numbers. Like, we're talking to them, we're asking clarifying questions. It's important that they are there in case there is something that we need from them in that moment. We never want to do the quality review after a taxpayer leaves, because they need to be there. And also because we should be doing the quality review before they sign it, and they would need to be there to sign it anyway. So the taxpayer is involved and engaged in the quality review process. Verifying identity. So, identity theft is something we try and minimize as much as we can. So we have to make sure we're checking photo IDs of the taxpayer and the spouse, and making sure we're checking social security cards for everyone on the return. It says exceptions for requiring a photo ID can be made by the site coordinator under rare circumstances and for taxpayers known to the site. I would say refer to your site coordinator in this case, but probably going to be a pretty rare situation where, it's probably going to be a rare situation. Most people that have been coming to us know to bring their photo IDs at this point. So it'd be pretty unusual for it to be, someone who doesn't have their photo ID that falls into this exception. Required documents, again, photo ID for taxpayer and spouse if they're filing jointly, and then a social security card or an I-10 for all the persons listed on the tax return. Also required documents are proof of income, expenses, and life events as detailed on the II form. The II form will have like a whole list of like different types of income, different things that have tax documents associated with them. And the point of that is they answer yes or no. Did this happen to me during the year? Because that lets our preparers know, okay, well, they marked yes to this. I need to look out for this kind of form. Or they mark no to this. I don't need to worry about looking for this kind of form. So the II form is a tool designed to assist IRS tax law certified volunteers in asking questions to obtain the information needed to prepare an accurate tax return. Like I mentioned, anything that's marked as unsure, by the time they go through working with the preparer and doing the quality review, we are only in compliance if all of those unsures have been marked yes or no. Nothing should be left as unsure on the return by the time it's done. I'm going to pause for 1 second to actually just show you all the II form. I realize I haven't done that yet. We've looked at the first page. So this is the first page where it asks their personal information. But talking about, income and life events, this is the second and third page where it's just check boxes. It's like, in the past year, did you receive any wages? And if they mark yes, if they mark yes, we can know, oh, they should have a form W-2. How many jobs do they have? Making sure we're writing that down as well. And one other thing I want to draw attention to on this form that's really helpful, these letters in parentheses,
Can you make it bigger?
oh yeah, sorry, thank you. These letters in parentheses here, these indicate the certification level required to work on that topic or on those forms. So, wages on a W-2, it's going to be B for basic. Anyone with the basic certification can work on that. But tip income, that's going to be A for advanced. You'll need so when we say, assigning a client to a tax preparer with that certification level, this is an easy way to check that, is just to look, what did they mark yes to? and what certification level is required. So if they mark yes to anything with an A, you know you're gonna need at least an advanced certified preparer to work on it. Also, I think it's just the one. There is, the M is for military. That is a certification that most of our volunteers do not have. So that might be out of scope for the site altogether. So if they mark yes to that, you might need to let them know, I'm sorry, that's out of scope for this site, because it would require the military certification. So third page is just more check boxes for the most part. This is stuff that we'll put in at the end of the tax return, kind of like graphic surveys. And lastly, they'll sign on the fourth page. So that is the II form that I've been talking about so much. That's what it looks like. It all comes together. It's just like a 4-page or a 2-page, 4-page front and back orange packet. So pretty recognizable. Okay, so there are different methods for completing it. Taxpayers can complete the form at the site before meeting with the tax preparer. That's, like ideally how it works. They come to the site, they pick up the form when they sign in, they fill it out while they're waiting, and they have it completed and ready by the time they sit down with the preparer. They could also complete the II form prior to arriving at the site. I've had some people have gotten that form earlier and filled it out at home and brought it back, or they printed out their own and filled it out at home. They do this, that they can do that, but it's, it's still important for us to do the interview with them and do the quality review with them to make sure that everything on that II form is true and accurate and complete and nothing left is unsure or blank. And if additional assistance is needed, the taxpayer can complete the II form during the interview with preparer, like if they need some additional help with something, if they have some things they're unsure about, they can finish it during that process, and that'll be when we're changing things that are marked as unsure to yes or no. The II form is printed in English and Spanish, and is available in other languages that can be printed from the irs.gov. Yeah, so we talked about this, determining the certification level. So B for basic, A for advanced, and M for military. So just, knowing, who are your tax preparers, what are their certification levels? Most of the certification levels of our preparers will be at least advanced, and knowing, which clients to assign to which preparers based on the certification. So that's something that's easy to check on that II form because of those letters right there. Yeah. So we always have to make sure that everything we're doing is within the scope of service, making sure it's within our certification level. If it's out of our scope of service, like if it's above 64,000 or it's in one of the topics listed in our scope of service chart that are marked as out of service, making sure that we don't do it, making sure that we are letting the taxpayer know we're sorry, this is out of scope for VITA, and then referring them to someone else, like those referrals we looked at in the slides. You can avoid conflict of interest by not suggesting a professional preparer associated with the volunteer or any other specific individual organization, because that would be in violation of the standards of conduct, because it'd be benefiting yourself, another individual, or another organization. Assigning the tax return, so each part of a process for assigning return, so that's that client assignment sheet. And then, using your scope of service chart, make sure that we're just staying in scope. So an overview of the intake process, confirming photo ID and social security cards, reviewing the intake interview form, interviewing the taxpayer. So talking to them, going through it, making sure we're having this conversation to verify everything on the return is accurate and complete, and then make a filing status and dependency determinations, as well as review documentation like income, expenses, or life events. So this is after the intake. This is the actual interview process. And this is where, typically the preparer will be sitting down with the taxpayer, and they'll start this process using the forms that have already been completed. So again, the first thing they'll do is they check photo ID and social security numbers. That's really important that we're seeing those original copies and not a photocopy. We've already talked about the exceptions to the site. It's up to the discretion of your site coordinator, but I would still not expect it to be something you see a lot, should be a pretty rare situation. So the next thing we'll do as part of the interview is the tax preparer will review the II form. System's easy. So make sure that, you know, when we are reviewing this I form, we're looking at the information completed by the taxpayer. We're engaging that taxpayer in a conversation to get more information if we need it. And we're verifying that all the questions have been marked yes or no, nothing being left unsure. Also on the II form, this on the first page, this gray box at the bottom right, this part is actually going to be completed by the tax preparer. So making sure that they do that the taxpayer doesn't fill this out, but that the preparer fills this out and that is complete. All right, so we've talked about due diligence a little bit, just making sure that during the interview process, we are implementing our due diligence, that we are relying on information from the taxpayer without requiring documentation as verification. Clarify information that may appear to be inconsistent or incomplete. You know, this is why we do an interview. This is why we ask the questions, just to make sure everything is as clear as it can be for both the taxpayer and for our preparers. Determine if the information is unusual or questionable. So like I said, if you have reason to believe that information being provided to you is not true or accurate, please let your site coordinator know. And yeah, talk to your site coordinator if you have any other concerns. Also, again, if you're not comfortable with the information provided by the taxpayer, you are not obligated to prepare the tax return. You know, if you have reason to believe that it's not true or accurate. We're going to ask some questions to get more clarifying information during the interview process. So, you know, the preparer will ask probing questions about things written on the I form. They'll ask open-ended questions just to get as much, excuse me, just to get as much information as possible, and they will confirm that information provided by the taxpayer is complete and accurate. So, just an example of this, a taxpayer marked that they'll be claiming their grandchild. How long did the grandchild live with you? I see you have a pension. What are your other sources of income? Just ways to like get them talking, because you know there's a lot of information on those II forms, and a lot of the times people might mark no that they did not receive something. But if our preparer engages in a thorough interview and just asks these questions and makes it a conversation, it really can help people remember, like, oh, I didn't know that this on that form was in reference to this. Yeah, I got to check for that, something like that. Sometimes the II form will raise additional questions, so just be on the alert for unusual circumstances. I see you and your husband both worked and you have a 3-year-old son. I don't see any expenses for childcare. Did you pay childcare expenses? How much? And do you have a statement? That's just something, you know, a preparer might be aware of, because it's possible they could get, you know, a credit for having paid childcare expenses. So noticing that both spouses worked and that they had a 3-year-old son, that's a great example of a good question to ask during a thorough interview. I see you're over the age of 70, but you do not indicate that you received Social Security benefits. Did you receive a form SSA 1099? That's just, you know, if they're over that age, then it's more than likely they're receiving Social Security benefits. So yeah, just, you know, reading the I form, taking in the situation, and having the awareness to ask these open-ended questions or these follow-up questions is a big part of the interview process. The personal information on the first page. So during the interview, we'll verify that part 1 on the II form is correct and complete. And again, we want to make sure that the names are matching what is on the Social Security card. If there's any variance between like your photo ID and the Social Security card, we want the names exactly as they are on the Social Security card, because that's what we're going to need to transmit the return to the IRS. Oh, for this part of part 1, make sure they mark yes or no and don't leave this blank, because it could affect their tax return and maybe change their refund or their credits they're receiving, whether they were permanently and totally disabled, a full-time student, or legally blind. Yeah, again, make sure they're just checking all of the questions. If they have a spouse, make sure the spouse is making sure that all the check boxes have been complete as well, so that nothing is left blank. So for marital status, this will help our tax preparers make a determination of their filing status for the return, as well as different credits and deductions they might be eligible for. So, talking with the taxpayer, trying to figure out what their marital status is, whether it's never married, married, divorced, legally separated, or widowed. If divorced, legally separated, or widowed, making sure that we're getting the appropriate dates here as well, because that could have some effects on the return depending on what the date was when that marital status took effect. As well as if they get married, did they get married in 2023? Yes or no? Was this within the tax year? And did you and your spouse live apart during any of the last 6 months of 2023? Yes or no? Make sure date or year is filled in under marital status information. All right. So this bottom section, this will be information in the household section. This is really important because it helps our preparers determine things like dependents or potential head of household filing status. One thing that I've been asked about a lot is people will see this box and think it only means children, but no, we are asking for anyone who lived with you in the last year, because it's possible even if they're not, your child or your direct relative, that they might still make you eligible for some kind of credit or beneficial filing status. So making sure that we clarify that with the taxpayers if they think it's only for children or only people, that they are planning on claiming. It might be possible they could claim someone else as dependent and not even realize that. So we want to make sure that our preparer is aware that they live with someone. That way they can, at least tell the taxpayer that and give them the option of, well, you might be eligible of claiming someone else and receiving this benefit here. So at least they're aware of it, whether they choose to or not.
Hey, Hunter,
Yes.
on that, in that section right there where the dependents in that gray area right there, and I hate to keep mentioning on this social security number thing, but I noticed like when it says, because I have the physical copy right here in my hand too, but it says it asks for the date of birth, but there's nowhere to put like the social security number, just say of the child, or if they have a mother as a dependent. Is this the part where when we're doing the greeting process or asking for the social security card for each one, we'll have the physical one, but do we make a photocopy of the social security card and attach it with like when we collect the W-2 information or whatever, or when the taxpayer is ready to see the tax preparer, do she have the physical cards in hand, or is there somewhere in that section that we can put the social security number next to the dependent, the child or whatever on that? Did that be clear enough?
That was, yes. Thank you for saying that. So to answer your question, everyone involved in the tax preparation process will need to take a look at those photo IDs and that social security card. So, if
Right.
you're the greeter or you're the initial preparer and you ask them to pull that out, if you notice them starting to put it away, I'll tell them like you can actually keep those out. Someone will come to do a quality review and they'll need to look at those as well. To the best of my knowledge, we don't retain any copies of social security cards, and we don't want to really write those
Make
on the
copies
II
of
forms either, right? Since that's such a confidential, thing. I think our only record of other people's social security numbers is going to be what's in TaxSlayer. Karen, Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we make any photocopies of social security cards.
We done at
Okay.
Stafford Mall.
Yeah, okay, well, what we do, hunters, when they are there and the screener is gathering their information, is paper clipped to the 13614C, so that when the preparer prepares the return, everything that they need is right there.
Right. But it's the physical
We
cards,
don't,
right?
we don't make
The
copies.
physical, we
no.
don't make copies, no.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. Did that
That's
answer your
what I'm
question?
It does.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we get to page 2, which is part 3. So income. Yeah, so the form pertaining to that type of income will be in parentheses to the right of it. So wages or salary. I can look at light 1. I can see, okay, wages and salary. If they have that, it needs at least someone with a basic certification, and they should have a form W-2. And I'm going to indicate how many jobs that they had based on the interview I'm having with the taxpayer. This is one that is easy to forget. I've forgotten this one on occasion. But make sure that we're putting in, even if it's just one, make sure they're putting the one in right there. But if someone says, oh yeah, I work, 4 jobs, it's important to indicate a 4 right there. That way, whoever's doing the quality review can take a look at that and be like, okay, I see that you had 4 jobs, but I'm only seeing, 2 or 3 W-2s. You talk to me about what that other job was and what other income might need to be reported. If they mark yes to self-employment, then that's something that whoever's doing the interviews absolutely going to have to ask about, because then we'll have to make them a Schedule C as part of the tax return. And there are a lot of follow-up questions that go into that. If you're just a greeter or a screener, you won't need to know all the details of that, but just know that that is a big part of the interview, because if they have self-employment income, there's a lot of follow-up that goes into that, asking about the nature of their business, how the income was received, what expenses they had, and then preparing that Schedule C. Let's see. Again, just the importance of asking probing questions in this section. So an example is if a taxpayer checks yes to the question, I had retirement income or payments from pensions, annuities, or an IRA. If they only have given you a Form 1099-R from an IRA distribution, asking them, is this your only distribution? So one thing to note there is that the II form only has that extra space for number of jobs on that line 1 wages. So if they're just marking, yes, I had retirement, and they bring us this one 1099-R, it's possible they could have, other retirement income from a separate 1099-R that we would only really know about if, they didn't think to mention it, but only find that information out by conducting a thorough interview. Also, the preparer and the people working with the tax payer, sorry, you can make notes on the II form for sure. Like I said, we don't want to write the social security numbers on the II form, but other than that, you can make notes on it. There's a section for notes on the 3rd page that I've filled out before, but also like I'll just make like a little star next to a line. That way, whoever I'm passing it off to, whether that be the preparer or the quality reviewer, if it's something I feel they should be aware of, then I've got my notes in there and they can immediately see that and either know that information or know they need to follow up about that information by interviewing and asking questions with the taxpayer. And you can also make notes in TaxSlayer as well. Yeah, notate any comments when they provide any information that's not fully captured on the II form. The II form is pretty thorough, but if they say something that pertains to their tax return that isn't necessarily covered on the II form, make sure to make a note of that on the form as well. That way, again, when you hand it off to the next person, they can see that and either know that information or ask about that information. These are like just expenses they might have had in the past year, talking through the taxpayer with those, making sure that if they've paid any of these, then we're aware of those, as they might have a deduction or credit that might be beneficial to them for having paid those expenses throughout the year. Not a lot of people itemize anymore. That's something we rarely ever see after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2019. But I'm not gonna worry about that. And life events, just any of these things that might have happened throughout their past year, walking through these, because again, anything that's asked on here, the reason we're asking is it could potentially have an effect on their tax return, so we want to have that information. The next section on page 3, this indicates how they want to receive their income tax refund, as well as ask the demographic questions for the taxpayer survey. Yeah, if they want to do a direct deposit, they'll mark yes or no here. Or if they want to do anything else, if they want to make a payment directly from their bank account, if they owe a payment or anything like that, they'll put it here. But the main thing here is survey information and their direct deposit. Please note that they won't put their bank account on here. It's just yes or no. Do you want a direct deposit? We don't write account numbers on the II form either, as far as I'm aware. And then they'll sign their consent form on the back of the 4th page. This form is used by sites to initiate the global carry forward of taxpayer data, which is essentially, why it might autofill if they've, in prior years, if they've done their return with VITA and they consented to the global carry forward, then it'll just save them some time if they go back to VITA in the future as their information will carry over, and it can autofill just to, have us be able to pull back from it and to save us some time. But they can decline it. It's not required. It's just time saver. All right, so we're done with the intake. We're done with the interview. At this stage, the preparer would actually prepare the return. And once they're through with that, once they've typed in all the information and the return has been prepared, we'd move on to the quality review process. So again, the quality review is part of the quality site requirements and the volunteer standards of conduct. It's to make sure that the tax law was correctly applied on the return and that the return is free from error based on the taxpayer intake, interview, and all the supporting documents that we've received. The quality review process includes a quality review methods, components of a thorough quality review, and concluding the quality review process. So the quality review methods, so again, we don't do any self-peer reviews. It must be someone different than who initially prepared the return, but also who has the required certification level to conduct the quality review. There are two acceptable methods for quality reviewing a tax return. It can be a designated reviewer, so that's an IRS tax law certified volunteer who is solely dedicated to reviewing returns prepared by other IRS tax law certified volunteer preparers. So that's just someone who's there who's not involved in that initial preparation at all for any taxpayers. They're there solely to be a quality reviewer. And then peer-to-peer, which is a little more common. This is something where a lot like people kind of swap off, like one person will do the preparation for one taxpayer, another person will do the preparation for a different taxpayer, and then when they complete their initial preparations, they will quality review each other's work just to make sure we have two sets of eyes on everything. And self-review is when a quality review, when they do their own, and it's not allowed. The quality review process must include these critical actions. So involving the taxpayer's participation during the quality review to confirm they understand and agree with the information on the tax return. Again, this is necessary for them to be informed before they can sign the return. And then that's, again, why we have to do the quality review with them before they sign that return. A necessary component of a quality review is the review of the II form to ensure proper completion. Part of that quality review is making sure that there's nothing left marked unsure or blank on that II form. And then lastly, the review of all supporting documentation and other information provided by the taxpayer to confirm all items were entered correctly on the return. So yeah, just double checking all the forms, double checking W-2s, 1099s, and comparing it to what we have on TaxSlayer, on their 1040, and making sure that everything's been entered correctly. Some additional components of a quality review, the correction of errors identified on the II form. So making sure anything that might have been marked one way initially, but then after the interview, we realized it was a different situation, making sure that that's corrected both on the II form and in TaxSlayer. The verification that all items listed in the quality review checklist and in publication 4012 are addressed when reviewing them. A review of tax law references, so that's Pub 4012 and Pub 17. Also, your federal income tax for individuals and volunteer tax alerts to verify the accuracy of tax law determinations. And lastly, informing the taxpayers before they sign the return of their responsibility for information on the return. We want to emphasize that by signing the tax return, they declare under penalty of perjury that they have examined the return and its accompanying forms and schedules for accuracy. And like letting them know, like, I mean, at this point, like with them signing it makes them the responsible party for the information on that return. That's why we do everything in our power to make sure it's accurate before we have that transfer of liability. But once they sign it, they're the ones responsible for the information on that return. The final steps of the quality review. The quality review is done when all the errors have been corrected on the return. If errors have been found during the review, the corrected return must be reviewed by the quality reviewer to ensure that all errors were addressed. Best practice is to compare the return to prior year's tax return if available to ensure nothing was overlooked from the previous year. This is kind of like what I was talking about, how previous returns can be a helpful tool for us, even though they don't satisfy the identification requirements. Like it's so much easier for me to feel fully confident in doing a return where I can reference back to their previous year return, especially because if I look at it, I'm like, oh, I see last year, you had this form of income. Were you still doing that at any point this year? Like if it was something like, a cash business, like did you stop that right at the end of December of that year before? Or did you do this, maybe just for a couple months this year? Because that's stuff that would matter. That's stuff that would affect the return. If it's income they received during that tax year, then we need to report it. So being able to look at the previous year's return is a great reference tool, even though it doesn't satisfy the identification requirement. Finally, the quality reviewer asks one last time if the taxpayer has any questions prior to printing the return and before the taxpayer signs the return. The print set. So, for each taxpayer we work with, when we do the return, most of them will be filing electronically, but even those that are filing electronically, they still will receive a taxpayer copy of their return, just because we want everyone, first of all, to have the physical one that they sign, but also to keep that for their records. We must provide at minimum the taxpayer copy to the taxpayers, and the below worksheets are included in that print set and will only be printed if they are relevant to the return. So that just includes different tools and schedules that might be generated by TaxSlayer in that print set, but only if it pertains to what was on the 1040. The signature requirement. Taxpayers must be advised verbally of the responsibility concerning the accuracy of the information they provided the tax return before signing. I'll say one thing especially, we want taxpayers to review all of it and ensure accuracy for all of it. But if they're doing a direct deposit, I have them like triple, quadruple check that bank account number, because there are a lot of things that if a number is wrong and we transmit it, it'll get rejected and sent back to us. And that's kind of a pain, but it's something that's, most of the time fairly easy to resolve. If the bank account number is wrong, it doesn't get sent back to us. It goes to the IRS and they approve it and they put the money in someone else's bank account. And, we don't know that until the taxpayer calls us like months later saying, hey, I never got this. And then we look and see it was accepted. And we say, hey, is this your bank account? And they say no. And that's bad. That's not fun. It's much easier to, correct a rejected return than it is to get the bank involved. So yeah, please have them triple check their account number when they're ensuring it for accuracy, and when we're asking them to give us their signature. We should always advise the taxpayer of their responsibility. The best time to do that is after the quality review, but prior to them signing the return. So, usually this is when I'm printing out their print set. Like when I'm saying, okay, everything looks good, I'm going to print out for you now. While that's printing, I'm going to ask for you to sign it, but before you do, please look it over, please check everything, and, know that you sign this, it'll make you the responsible party for the accuracy of the information on this 1040. If they're filing a joint return, then both the taxpayer and the spouse must be there to validate proof of their identity, and they both must sign the return. And there can be exceptions to this, but that's up to the discretion of the site coordinator and would require the Form 8879. All right, there are some reference tools here in these slides. So we've got the Form 13614C, which is the II form, the virtual consent form if you're at a drop-off site, the Pub 17, which is your federal income tax, the 524, credit for the elderly or disabled. The 4012 is the one that you'll see our preparers using the most. This is pretty much it's the volunteer resource guide, but it's pretty much like the tax law applicable to VITA. It's pretty much what it is. So that's kind of the go-to resource for a lot of people who are doing the preparation. You've got the privacy, confidentiality, and civil rights, the volunteer quality site requirements, if you ever need to review those, and the intake, interview, and quality review handbook. And so that's kind of wrapping up the intake, interview, and quality review course. There are 3 distinct processes that are part of the preparation of the return. there's a direct correlation between the proper use of the II form and the preparation of an accurate tax return. Like the II form is long, but that's because it's thorough, and you want your taxes, you want the person preparing your taxes to be thorough. So we need to use this form and use it in its entirety. Must be completed for every tax return prepared at the site before the return preparation begins. And only tax law certified volunteers may answer taxpayer questions related to the tax law on the 13614. Every tax return prepared at the site must have a quality review using the quality review checklist that you see in publication 4012. It's just going to be a checklist version of the things we've talked about through these slides. The quality review must include the taxpayer. We cannot do that after they leave. It should be before they sign, so they need to be there. And the taxpayer must be informed verbally before they sign the tax return of their responsibility for the information listed on their return. Tax returns must not be transmitted before quality review is completed and before they've signed the 8879 file signature authorization. The purpose, during this training, we covered that the purpose of following a consistent intake interview and quality review process, the different sections of the II form and quality review sheet, and the steps of intake, the steps of interview, and the steps of quality review. And that pretty much covers it for that training. Any questions before we move to the certification exam?
Yes, I'd like to know, let me make sure, I guess, that I understand what you're saying. There should not be on the II form anything written with their social security number or the bank account numbers on it, correct?
That's how I've previously done things. Karen or Denise, do y'all write down social security numbers or account numbers?
We have in the past,
Yeah,
we've never
Hunter,
had any problems.
Okay.
Hunter, what may happen is that we deal with a mixture of people, and some of those people are handicapped. So to keep them from constantly walking back and forth, what we have done is that area, I think it's on part 3 or 4, where there is enough space to write their social security number and or the banking information. We allow them to write it there, and then we prepare the return while they may be sitting at where they're sitting, so they won't have to continuously move.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
We shred that 13614C at some point, so we've never had any problems.
Okay, perfect. Then yeah, I would say, some sites, have their own, their own methods of doing this. I would say talk to your site coordinator, see how they want it done at their site, and then do that. Because like I said, like the examples y'all gave are perfect examples of a good time to do that. I haven't done that, but again, this is really my first full tax season at United Way, so I'm not trying to, override anything that y'all have been doing that's working for y'all.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Okay, now we would normally make a copy of the 1099 SSA. Is that permissible since we can't do the social security card? Or is that totally different? Maybe I should say that.
What we've done is use that pink and white social security form that they get, the SSA 1099. We can use that instead of social security cards if they do not have it. We can use the social security form.
Okay, great.
That's what you're asking.
And we can make a copy of it, because I know he was
We
saying
don't make copies. We don't make copies.
Oh, you don't make copies of that? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I think possibly what you're thinking about, I don't know how long you've been a volunteer, but when we had COVID, we were making copies of documents in order that we would have everything that we need. But that was then, and so we're now back in person, so there is no need to make any copies.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, all right.
We would just attach that with the W-2s that we collect from the when they're, because it's part of the income, isn't it in one of the income section where the Social Security card or
yes, that would be part of your information that you would paperclip. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions before we take a look at that exam? All right. Y'all bear with me. Give me like 30 seconds. I'll be right back. Someone's knocking at my door, so I gotta see what's going on with that. I'll be back in about 30 seconds. I apologize.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that. Thank y'all. And so this is going to be the second of the two certification exams for greeters and screeners. This is going to be take interview and quality review test questions.
I'll take
That-
number one.
What's that?
Number one, all IRS certified volunteer preparers participating in the VITA TCE programs must use Form 13614C or Forms 13614NR, along with a thorough interview for every return prepared at the site. True.
That is
Number-
true.
Number 2, what must the certified volunteer preparer do with the Form 13614C before starting the tax return? The selections are: make sure all questions on Form 13614C are answered, change unsure answers to yes or no based on a conversation with the taxpayer, determine the certification level required to complete the return, and D, all of the above. And of course, the answer is D, all of the above. You're correct, Calandra.
That's correct.
Number 3, the basic certification level is required to prepare a return with tip income. The answer is B, false.
That's
Brandon,
correct.
Now take
It should be advanced.
number 4. Number 4, a date must be entered on Form 13614C, Part 2, marital status and household information to determine the appropriate filing status for the taxpayer who are A, divorced, B, legally separated, C, widow, D, all of the above. D, all of the above.
5, VITA TCE volunteers use publication 4299, privacy, confidentiality, and civil rights, a public trust, to determine if a return is within scope. False. It should be the 4012.
number
Right, it
6.
would be the scope of
Go ahead.
service. Yep.
We trying to save you, Hannah.
Sorry.
Number
y'all
6.
go ahead.
Number 6, VITA TCE sites are required to conduct quality reviews, A, for all returns prepared by volunteers who have less than 2 years of experience preparing returns, B, for every return prepared at the site, C, only when there is a quality reviewer available, D, for all returns prepared by volunteers with certification levels below advanced, military, or international. And of course, the answer is B, for every return prepared at the site.
All right, for
7.
number 7, in
7,
most
in most,
cases. Oh, you go
Okay.
ahead.
okay, in most cases, a volunteer must review photo identification for every taxpayer to prevent the possibility of identity theft. The answer is A, true.
Okay, young man, you want to take number 8?
Yeah, no problem. So when does the taxpayer sign a tax return? Is A, before quality review and before being advised of the responsibility for the accuracy of the information of the return? B, before quality review and after being advised of their responsibility for the accuracy of the information on the return? C, after quality review and before being advised of their responsibility for the accuracy of the information on the review? Or D, after quality review and after being advised of their responsibility for the accuracy of the information on the return? And I'm going to say the answer is D, after the quality review and after being advised.
Very good, James. Karen, number 9.
The site is busy with many taxpayers waiting for assistance. All volunteers are busy preparing tax returns. Can you quality review the return you just prepared instead of waiting for someone else to quality review the return? A, yes, if it's a returning taxpayer. B, yes, with approval of the site coordinator. C, no, self-review is never an acceptable quality review method. D, no, unless you are certified at the advanced level. The answer is C, no, self-review is never an acceptable quality review method.
Number 10, the last one. Which of the following is true? A, quality review can be conducted by a volunteer preparer certified at basic when the tax return required an advanced certification to prepare. B, quality review is conducted after the taxpayer signs the return. C, quality review is an effective tool for preparing an accurate tax return. And D, taxpayers do not need to be involved in the quality review process. And the answer is C. Quality review is an effective tool for preparing an accurate tax return. Back to you.
That is correct. Thank you all so much. Any questions about this exam before I close this out? All right, so those are the 2 certification exams. Pretty straightforward based on the material we've covered. The last thing I wanted to show y'all is once you have completed those 2 and it's showing that you passed volunteer standards of conduct and passed intake interview, you're going to sign your agreement by just checking this box. It'll put your name and date on there, and then you just click on this link to get the PDF. Just download it and just hang on to those for the time being. Over the weekend or on Monday, I'm going to make like a cloud folder to store those in. And then I'll either share that link directly or have you email them to me, but just make sure you check that box once you've completed the exams and passed them, and you can download the PDF of your agreement by clicking on this link here. And then once you have that, just hang on to it until I ask for that via Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. And then you should be good to go to start volunteering. When you're ready to start volunteering, we'll share, I think I've actually already shared it, like the list of the sites. So you just, reach out to the site coordinators at the sites where you are interested in serving and let them know you're interested in coming by, that you've completed your certifications and you would like to be a greeter or screener there. But outside of that, I think I've pretty much wrapped it up. I know we're about 25 or so minutes early, but you know what? It's a Friday night, so I'm okay with giving everyone that time back if y'all are okay with that. But I'm also happy if anyone has any questions and wants to stay on, I'm happy to answer questions for as long as I can help.
I have a question, Hannah. This is Brenda. I need some, did we get any clarification on Tuesday? They were stating, a couple of them stating that when they come in with the W-2 on your telephone, they've been getting a blank W-2 and writing information on there. That was kind of a shock to some of us, and I want to know, did we get any clarification on that?
So I haven't heard, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I was gonna say, I haven't heard an official ruling or anything, but I spoke with Matt about it, and as far as I'm aware, I think the best policy would just be to have it up to the discretion of the site coordinator, because it seems like at some sites, it works for them, and at other sites it doesn't work for them. And while there is a lot of benefit in standardizing things across sites, like I don't want to make any site where it doesn't work for them have to, do something that disrupts their flow of traffic or disrupts their operations. But at the same time, I don't know if standardization alone is a good, like a valid reason for if it's been working at one site, and we've got taxpayers that have got the expectation of that being acceptable at that site, for them to show up and to not be able to get their returns completed just because we've decided to standardize that policy across sites. So all that to say, oh, go ahead.
Okay, it's not, it's that we never had heard of it before. It's never been done before. That was a lot of our first time hearing that. And if it's gonna be something done, it's just like I would like clarification on.
Okay, so Brenda, let me say, this is Denise. Okay, I've spoken to Matt as well, and he is reaching out to Nashville. And so at this time, the only thing that I would suggest, and I know this may not be the forum because these are our screeners and greeters, and they may or may not be traveling, so it may be the right forum. But I would hope that anyone who's traveling from place to place, that they would check with the site coordinator at that place that they are working that day, so that they can adhere to the process that is in place for that particular site.
Yeah, 100%. Is that helpful? Does that answer your question?
Hmm. As a screener, or I mean, the screener or greeter, when the taxpayer comes in that says, well, I have my W-2 on the form, while they are in the waiting area filling out their the 1361545, we can, if they say, well, I have a W-2 on that, so before we start the interview with them, can we just give, if the site decides to do it that way, have them fill out that blank W-2 before they come up to be interviewed? Have them fill it out while they're in the waiting area if they know they have their W-2s on their cell phone or however they have it, electronically.
I would say if that's the practice of that particular site, then yes. But if it's not the practice of that site, you should ask them to go and have it printed so you can have a hard copy and then come back.
Yeah, I agree. I think yeah,
I agree
ultimately
with
just
that too. I agree with that too.
yeah. So in the matter of like, you know, having the tax form digital on a phone or a tablet, I would say that volunteers and greeters and screeners, you know, need to be familiar with the site coordinator's policies about that situation at the sites where they're serving. That way they know, you know, if someone comes in with that and they're doing the greeter or screener and they see that at the forefront, they know what their site's policy is and what their coordinator's position is on that, and can, you know, adhere to the policies of the site where they're at.
Hi, yes, this is Calandra. I have a question. This is going to be my first year volunteering, and I actually signed up for a greeter screener. And my initial goal was to participate in the vital office on the IRS campus. But I've been told that you got to have at least basic, which I'm still going to certify for basic, I think. But if I wanted to just do this, greeter at another facility, is there a list of coordinators? Because I see the list of sites, but I don't see the site coordinators listed.
Yeah, I think I can either share that coordinator list with you, or if there are sites that you're interested in, just email me which sites you're interested in, and I'll connect you to the coordinators at those sites.
Okay, I can ask a question now. Ms. Denise, are you a site coordinator?
Yes, Calandra, I saw your name. I am. I'm located at 1005 Tillman.
Okay, okay. That might be where I'm interested in going. I remember Ms. Denise, I worked with her for a while.
Okay.
Yeah,
But I'll just send me a list, because I might do some, because where is that located, Miss Denise?
1005 Tillman and Jackson.
Okay, okay. But yeah, just let me know, because I know I'm probably interested in doing some weekends, because that's not available at work either. So I'm interested in doing more than one site.
So get my number and we can be in touch, okay? Because you probably
I
have
will.
lost it. Okay, all right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey Hunter, you said once we sign the VSC and intake exam thing, we upload it and send it to United Way first, and then we make a copy to also take to the site that we want to volunteer at?
So
Did I understand that correctly?
kind of. Essentially right now, once you have it, just hang on to it for now. I'll email everyone when I have the like the cloud folder ready to receive those. And then once
Right.
I've received them, I'll sign them all. And then I'm gonna talk with Matt about the best way to distribute them, whether that be to email them back to y'all individually or just send them, to the sites directly. I'm gonna talk to Matt about that and see what the best way to, once I sign it, to get it back to y'all is. But for now, I would say just hang on to it until I send y'all either like a Dropbox or a cloud link or something like that to collect them.
Okay.
Okay, Hunter, this is Brenda again. Are you saying that you're gonna sign all of our certification? Cause normally, Karen is our site coordinator, so she has been signing our certification. So just send them to you to be signed.
No, I was still saying your assistant site. Yeah, I was still saying yours. But
No,
he's
but he
gonna
was saying-
sign mine. He's gonna sign mine.
But he was saying send them to him to be signed.
I-
Or did I misunderstand?
Well, the reason I said that was I was under the impression that someone from the sponsoring partner had to sign those forms. So like either Matt or me or someone with you, like someone at United Way. But let me double check with Matt and I'll get back to y'all about those forms once I collect them all. And in terms of like signatures, I'll like talk to Matt about how he's done that in previous years, and I'll let y'all know. Because I'm gonna have to check with him about that because I don't know. I was under the impression it had to be like a United Way staff, like a full-time United Way staff member. But if the site coordinators have been doing it, and that's fine. That's fine with me. I wasn't aware of that, so I'll check with him.
Hunter's site coordinators have been signing for the assistant, but the United Way staff have been signing for the site coordinators.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, and then the site coordinates for anyone that comes to volunteer. Yes, you would need to bring a copy of that with you so that we could sign up on it and have it in our file.
Okay, I got you. Sounds good. Any other questions?
This is Avis Smith again, and I have one last question regarding the 13615. Now, at the bottom of the 13615 for the continuing education credits only, I do the continuing ed every year because I get in the AFSP program. So at the end of the volunteer or tax season, is that when I'm going to take the initial, to my site that I'm going to volunteer at, but then at the end, I know the site coordinator signs at the very bottom and she sends that over to United Way so I can get the continuing ed credits in my P10 account at the IRS site. So do I just go ahead and fill out what information I can, and then at the end where it says the total volunteer hours and stuff like that, you don't sign the form before that, or do you sign it and then I have to print off another one for you to sign the continuing ed part?
I'm not exactly sure. I haven't completed the CE credit portion of that form before. I want to say that you would just fill out things through before it becomes a grayed area that says to be completed by the coordinator or partner. But in terms of who would fill out the rest, I'll check with Matt about those to see if he's got experience with that. I've never completed that form before. Like based on reading it now, it looks like it would be someone from United Way, but I will check with Matt to see what their official policy is on that.
Yeah, because I do have to get I know, in the previous years that I have gotten the site coordinator's signature, but as far as that goes, I don't know if there's another signature from the, the stakeholder liaison or whoever if they have anything to do with that as well. But that's what I'll, for the one she has at site. I don't know if I had to print off at least 2 or 3 copies, one to keep at the site that I'm volunteering, and then they have to sign again for my continuing ed credits. But that won't be until, like I said, after the tax season has come to an end. And VITA has, shut down for the end too, end of tax season.
Right, and I can follow up with Matt about our process for that.
Okay,
And if you ever need an extra copy or an extra signature, you can always reach out to me and I can get that for you. But I'll talk to Matt about how United Way's done continuing education credits in the past to make sure that we stay on top of it. But yeah, sorry,
Well-
I don't really know. I haven't done that before, and I'm not sure what Matt's done for that in prior years. So I'll check with him, see what the process is for that, and let you know.
okay, appreciate it.
No problem. Any other question?
I got one question. Ricky, I sent you a chat. Can you answer that for me before we get off, please?
And y'all all already should have my contact information, but I'm gonna put my name and email in the chat as well, just in case you don't have it. Has everyone on here been receiving my email communications? Are y'all all on that mailing list? If you're not, please let me know so I can make sure you're added to that and receive communication.
Yep, been receiving them.
Good. Well, I'll work on following up to a few of these questions and reach out to y'all once I have those answers, and I'll work on getting that cloud drive set up, receive the volunteer agreements. But otherwise, that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you. I know it's almost 9 o'clock on a Friday night, so I really appreciate y'all, taking your Friday night, especially now that we've been cooped up in the house for like 4 days. The roads are just now starting to be able to drive on them. So thank y'all for being here on this Friday night, and I'm really excited for this tax season. Really excited for my first full tax season with United Way, and appreciate y'all being here and being involved and your willingness to serve.
Appreciate it just as well.
Good job, Hunter.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Y'all have a
night.
good weekend.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
All right, have a good weekend. Everybody be safe.
All right, you too.